Hey everybody, it's another touch base, and it's yet another week in Parliament as we look at some of the more crucial issues like the fiscal framework and about what it means. This week was significant in that at one level, Parliament has taken a decision about what its economic outlook looks like, and it's on that basis that we fund programs. So that's what's called a fiscal framework. In essence, it gives an indicator as to where the state is wanting to go. And on another level, we had a release of the unemployment numbers. It's clear that there's been a certain uptick in the number of people employed, which is a welcome thing. It is relatively marginal, and all of us as South Africans need to welcome this, but also be deeply concerned about certain things. None of those jobs in the main came from manufacturing and other sectors, which tells us that our economy is largely dependent in certain instances on services, etc. So what is going to be crucial is that we think about the economy and employment over a long period of time. And that's why when I started with the fiscal framework, I think is important. The one underlying condition that will either determine whether the fiscal framework will succeed or not is on the basis of whether we're educating our kids. And in this regard, in real terms, we are cutting the education budget in terms of what we are appropriating towards it. And furthermore, we're creating a dual education system. When you look at the disproportionate amount of resources that go to low fee paying schools relative to high fee paying schools, you will appreciate the fact that we're creating an education system for the have and the have nots. But my broader argument simply sits at this: if we can't educate properly, we're going to live in a society where, when it's said and done, you have to keep spending on the social wage, because if people themselves, intrinsically, they may be getting an education, but extrinsically, they may not be able to deliver economic value for themselves, which means that you are burdening, you are creating a social wage bill that has to be sustained over a long period of time. So when you look at the 1 rand that gets given to the budget, 22 cents of it goes to debt, 38 cents of it goes to cost of employees, and the majority of what's left over actually goes to what is called the social wage, which is on things that citizens eventually become dependent on the state for: healthcare, education, security, etc. If that burden and social welfare, if that burden continues, we are in fact not making sure that more of our people are going to be economic participants, but rather are going to be state dependent, which creates this vicious loop where actually South Africans are getting poorer. The state is incapable of funding for growth. It is funding for social wage, and ultimately it means more and more people are dependent on it. So I am worried. I am deeply concerned. I am concerned equally so that the number of people who are not in employment, education, and training is remaining relatively above 10 million people, which means our young people, our youth, are lingering in townships, and townships are becoming dormitories of unemployment. This is something that must wake every single one of us to the realities that our country is facing. We have to do better at fighting for people to be able to find work. We have to do better at saying to ourselves, we can look at quarterly labor force survey, but we've got to do more about training young people in skills. We've got to allow them to become more engineers. We've got to allow them to ultimately be trained up in skill services so that they can become extrinsically, their education has got an extrinsic value in working in our society. I say this ultimately because I want a South Africa that is ambitious. I'm sick and tired of us setting standards of yesterday. We got to do better than where we are. We've got to dream of a country where more and more people participate. Yesterday, I was in a debate about public works. And yeah, we can talk about extended public works programs and those jobs, but they're menial. They'll keep people dependent on the state. What we need is more engineers, more town planners, etc. Because once those come on board, you then allow for more companies who can participate in our economy. You allow for more businesses to be started, especially in the construction sector. And you democratize access to opportunity. And we build cities of the future. That's what I want. That is the dream. And that's what we've got to be working on. So this week, I wanted us to look at the fiscal framework and also wanted us to know where our money is going, because ultimately we've got to make sure South Africa, every rand that is spent, more and more of it must be going towards economic growth and ensuring that more and more of our people can participate in the economy. Now, last two issues. Heban, in which universe does the Minister of Police walk out of Parliament? I find this completely a disregard of accountability. Without a formal apology, the Minister of Police, instead of answering all questions, left. In truth, in a country where at least over 75 people are murdered every day, in a country where in real terms we've only seen over the medium term just a marginal increase in the amount of money we spend on policing, in a country where it will require all of us, including private security, to work together to fight crime, that actually the Minister of Police holds a very crucial component of how we safeguard our citizens in giving a crime prevention strategy that incorporates all layers of government and all aspects of society. It is an evading of accountability for the minister to walk out. And they must be called out. He must come and account to the people of this country. People are not represented in Parliament. They are not represented in the executive. They are represented in Parliament. Parliament is where people get their answers. So, Minister of Police, I want to urge you, show up, stay through, because ultimately your evading of accountability does not serve the people of this country. I want to speak a little bit more about a very sensitive topic, which is the plight of Zama-Zamas, and for many of them who have been caught underground. Economic opportunities are crucial for citizens. We have to make it possible that we stop illegality and make sure we protect the rights of all citizens. Now, many people, like they did with the Spaza shops issue and now this particular one, are quickly making it an issue of immigration. Say these are foreigners, they're coming to mine illegally, etc., etc. Or these are foreign-owned Spaza shops, therefore all of that. You see, human rights cannot know a passport. As difficult as that is to accept, if you have less human rights because your passport is not of the country that you are in, well, we are running a greater danger of saying to ourselves we have differentiated views on what human rights mean. Even criminals have rights. And yes, you might say, well, they are suppressing the rights of everybody else. But let's fight crime. But the way to do it is to make sure we do it in a dignified way that upholds human rights. Now, yes, I want us to be very strong and aggressive on anyone who commits a crime. But ultimately, because of the way our system is set up and our constitution is set up, we can't allow those who are breaking the law to invite us to also be lawbreakers ourselves. The state in this instance can't just go out and smoke out people, or can't just go out and simply say, well, the lives underground don't matter. These could be South African lives, or they could be any lives. Their rights are still important. Let's go out and fight a crime. If anyone is mining illegally, they must be arrested, because that is a crime. But ultimately, the manner we do it still with the preservation of human rights. For tomorrow, if we depart from our basic premise of law, we'll start to end up practicing illegality. And before you know it, well, if you get arrested and somebody takes an eye for an eye, and we say we practice that as an argument, we'll end up with a society that is blind and a society that is wounded. In fact, the very premise of our old system was such that once someone is caught committing a crime, their rights are suppressed. That's why there were so many practices. We can't, in a democratic South Africa, do that. And if we want tougher actions on crime, well, let's all of us come back to Parliament, legislate better, and make sure we've got laws that help us be much more effective at fighting crime. My stance is simply this, that always we've got to devolve intelligence, We've got to partner with public and private security so that we can be quicker at identifying who the criminals are, get the right intelligence, and make sure there's better prosecution as it goes through the criminal justice system. Obviously, this issue of Spaza shops is going to continue in our communities. I was raised in Dobsonville, Soweto. Down the road from my house was a Spaza shop. We could not always afford a loaf of bread, so at times we had to go buy half a loaf of bread. We couldn't always afford a whole tray of eggs. Spaza shops let you buy 2 or 3. Unless you've lived through an economic condition such as that, you can glibly make bold statements such as, if there's an incident with, particularly in this one, and I want to send my deep condolences to families who have lost children in this regard. And I don't want to demean their lives. I merely want to say that to simply blame it and make it an immigration issue or a Spaza shop issue is wrong. It's about a food management issue. And secondly, let us understand the role Spaza shops play in our communities. They allow citizens to be able to purchase goods. They create jobs for those who run Spaza shops. And yes, we need better regulation and better oversight and training and make sure that they are registered properly so that we know who's running it and what food they produce. But if a mine finds itself with people who die in a mine, we don't wake up in the morning and say, shut all the mines. If there's an accident that involves taxis, we don't say, close all the taxis. We don't. We go and investigate the incident where it takes place. We intervene there, we arrest those people. It is nonsense when politicians are being populist and saying, shut out all the Spaza shops. We can't destroy the township economy. What we need to do is make sure it is better regulated, trained, and assisted so that it can produce better goods and look after our citizens. That has to be the focus. And I want to say, let's educate our kids to make sure they know what goods they are buying. Let's make sure food standards are adhered to. And let's make sure Spazas that are trading are registered and South Africans are able to trade in all of those sectors. So let us focus. South Africa, we need more and more people working, more and more jobs created, and Spaza shops help in many instances. Those who can't go to fancy malls or go to distant places to buy goods or access smaller quantities of things, they are wholly dependent on Spaza shops. And so let's ensure that we treat this matter with the economy that comes with it, with the urgency and the intelligence it deserves. Well, it may be unpopular, but let's have this conversation because it speaks to the heart of what human rights look like. I look forward to catching up with you next weekend. It's the international break, so Kaizer Chiefs aren't playing, so it is a good weekend for us. All the best. Sharp.
You don't want to do Danny Jordan?
Oh! Talk about football. I won't lie. I welcome the prosecution and the potential arrest or the laying of charges of on Danny Jordan. Football in this country has suffered, and I want to say that I think, now is the time that he faces the music. And I think Danny Jordan taking the stand, I hope the prosecution proceeds unhindered. Let us make sure that those who do the crime do the time. So certainly, let's make sure if he's committed a foul, he doesn't just get a yellow card, but it's a red card. Because ultimately, we need to send a strong message that football cannot be mafiosoed. It needs to be properly prosecuted. Sharp.